Hey guys, another edition of Off the Top Rope here on the Off the Mic Sports Network. Another wrestling video. I'm sorry for you non-wrestling fans who are coming here expecting content, but we will have some sports content. There was a major story in the NBA that broke that I will have some thoughts on shortly. Stay tuned here on the channel for that. But let's get into wrestling and one of my favorite things to do on Thursdays, and that is talk about the AEW television ratings. They closed the gap on NXT, but still they went down again. 563,000, neck and neck tied at 0.17 in the 18-49 demo, but NXT at 689 for the week. Still, this is really a fascinating thing to watch. NXT is regularly dominating AEW on a week-to-week basis, despite the talent discrepancy, although it's being closed a little bit now with the former Ricky Starks, now Ricky Saints. And then obviously you get the TNA infusion with Moose showing up there. Here's the thing. So AEW has had some decent stuff going. They've been putting on some decent shows lately. Like I said, even though Grand Slam Australia from a logistical perspective was a nightmare, it was a pretty good show, a pretty good wrestling show. They just didn't show a lot of effort into it. And it's reflecting in these television ratings because they started off so great with a 15-20 minute segment with their two aces, two of their biggest stars from day one, and Hangman Adam Page and MJF for AEW. And then this show just falls off a cliff, and we're at what? Almost just over 550,000 viewers for a company with Kenny Omega and Hangman Adam Page and MJF and Mercedes Moné and all these big solid names. Ricochet comes over from WWE, Will Ospreay, who wasn't even on the show. But it leads me to this conclusion, and I know when people see the headline for this video, they're going to look at me and say, "Oh, Mike, what are you talking about? Maybe you're just ripping on it." Guys, from the metrics and yes, it was a decent crowd, but they were in a theater. They were in a theater. They weren't in an actual arena. They're doing smart things to make it look more aesthetically pleasing, but that's because they're kind of behind in terms of the financial aspects, and they're not willing to put in the effort to get their fans to care anymore. And it's reflecting in their ratings where they're at barely over 550,000 viewers. So it leads me to this point. Nothing that AEW is doing is working. Nothing that they're doing is working. Because if it was, they'd be past NXT right now. They'd be rating better than a developmental promotion. But hey, a lot of people are mad about the WWE women's division right now. You see what happened in the AEW women's division on Wednesday night with the Thunder Rosa, Megan Bayne incident, and something had to have gone wrong there where they had to make Thunder Rosa look like a complete and utter geek. Thunder Rosa, who is supposedly a respected person, but I guess for whatever reason, people in AEW don't like her because that was weird. If you haven't seen the footage of it, it's on my social media. It's all over the place. Thunder Rosa comes in to make a save of Chris Statlander. By the way, I don't know what they're doing with Chris Statlander or Willow Nightingale. I'm going to have another video because all this conversation about the women's division in WWE has got me thinking about what's going on in the AEW women's division. And if you're complaining about women's wrestling, we need to have more eyes on what the hell is going on in AEW right now. Because outside of Tony Storm, I have no idea what the fuck they're doing. But that was a problem. Outside of the MJF thing, there really wasn't anything to cry home about on this show. And I said it. And then the main event of the show makes no sense. You've got Roderick Strong facing Orange Cassidy. Of course you're going to have a dying number. And then I talked about Grand Slam Australia being a great show. I think they got, don't have the official number. It was like 500, 600,000, around the same number. And yes, it was 11 o'clock Eastern time when this thing started to air. But yeah, they had a 1 million viewer lead in, yet they finished with under 300,000 people watching the main event between Tony Storm and Mariah May. Some people will say, "Oh, it was late at night." No, it's because nobody gives a shit about AEW, and you can't hook people in because nobody cares about your company. And that's why I say nothing that they are doing is working. And believe me when I tell you, things can change quickly. Look no further than WWE. When Vince McMahon was there, they were in a bad spot, specifically from 2017 to 2019. They were their ratings were okay because of the Fox partnership, but the attendance before they went to Fox was not great. They were having similar issues that AEW was having, half-filled arenas, struggling to fill houses. Like it was not great. So you can turn it around with good creative. It's the problem is AEW doesn't want to do it, which is why I'm preaching. Please, more segments and more builds and storylines like what happened at the start of this show, not what happened at the end of this show. Because what happened at the end of this show is quintessential Tony Khan not knowing what the fuck he is doing. Because if you would think for just a second, even though, like I said, I am not thrilled that Kenny Omega is back with the Don Callis family, which doesn't make any sense, but I see what they're going with. I think they're going for some sort of unification type deal between the Continental title and the International title, add all in between Okada and Omega, which is fine because that's two of the greatest wrestlers of all time facing off against each other. But again, you're not going to give me a reason to care if it's like their seventh time wrestling together, but still. Okada and Omega still has some name value for some of the sickos and for just generic wrestling fans. There's some interest there. But Kenny Omega, you know, going back against Takeshita, we saw it literally 2 years ago, like a year and a half ago. So I really don't understand this. But the point is, having Kenny Omega like not get an international championship before Orange Cassidy is kind of ridiculous. Like the formatting of it, but it's quintessential booking. They don't want to book a story, even though there is history between Omega and Takeshita. They could easily dive into that. They're not doing it. They also could have built more with Fletcher and Ospreay. Neither one of them were on this show, which was weird. Like I said, more of what you did to start the show and littered that across the show, because old school AEW, like in the early stages, like 4 or 5 years ago, was really great. It was really generally great. And it was because you had stories outside of the ring translating to the in-ring. Now it's just a bunch of matches. That being said, MJF, I'm legitimately so freaking excited. It's probably the only match at Revolution I'm legitimately thrilled about. MJF and Hangman Adam Page. Because honestly, it should be for the world title, but it's not. To me, that's the main event. I know it's going to be Cope versus, John Moxley, but, hey, they got to have their WWE retreads. That's the other part of this. Just a bunch of people we've already seen before, a bunch of matches we've already seen before, and then it's just, catered to the sickos. That's why nobody's watching. And that's why I say everything that they're doing isn't working. Even if it's good, and even if it's good content and good wrestling, that's never been the issue. You're trying to appeal to a different audience. Like that's what you say you're trying to do, and you're trumpeting up all this being a success and all that, but and bringing in all these talented people on your roster. But it's like it's all about like creating an alternative and giving some other people something to watch. Really, what it's about is like you're just catering to the independent wrestling geeks, and if you'd market that way, maybe this would land a lot better, but that's not what you are. You're basically trumpeting yourself as WWE Light. And that's what a lot of people are not really looking for. And that's why I've had a huge problem with the identity of this place. And that's why none of this is working. Because if it were working, they'd be ahead of NXT right now. NXT, a developmental show with Obafemi, a guy who 5 years ago was in college as like, a shot putter or something like that. Trick Williams, former football star, was the champion of that promotion. And now they've mixed it with guys like Ethan Page, outcasted from there. And now you've got Ricky Starks with a new name, outcasted, now there. It's night and day. Fix it. I'm telling you guys, fix it. And nobody wants to admit these issues. And every time I come on and do one of these videos, I get labeled as a grifter, even though I'm not making money off of this shit. I genuinely care, okay? And when I see this type of stuff coming out and I see the numbers that back it up and the attendance that back it up, that this is not working, despite good content happening in the last 5 or 6 or 7 shows, it's not working. Even if it's good television, you've got to rethink your strategies. Nobody's going to want to tell the big boss that he's wrong. And that's where the problem is. Because, hey, Tony Khan, And on some level, I understand he doesn't want to give away his baby to Shane McMahon because that was a big story. Um, so that big story came out, and Shane McMahon wanted equity and wanted to book the thing. Shane McMahon's not that great of a booker. Look at the 2022 Royal Rumble and the men's Royal Rumble and the disaster that was. Go look that up. I'll let you guys go read that after you watch this video. That being said, taking Shane's ideas, I don't think would have been the worst thing in the world. Getting a different input in there rather than, just pleasing yourself, which is basically what this is for Tony Khan. It's just a hobby. It's not an actual job. He doesn't care. He got his paycheck. He got his extension. He doesn't care anymore. So that's my conclusion on that in terms of the ratings and my take on the ratings this week. Hopefully they heed my warning. And I've been saying this since, NXT went to CW that this was going to change. And it hasn't happened. And, AEW's getting beaten and regularly getting embarrassed. So until they fix it, I don't see anything changing. Anyway, I'll see you guys soon. Bye-bye.